Okay, across the mortal realms, armies march beneath brilliant banners, heroes come to life beneath painstaking layers of color, and somewhere, a flesh eater court noble is admiring what he believes is an absolutely stunning paint job. Welcome to the Cousins Grimm, a podcast about Warhammer, its world, its stories, and the questionable decisions we make while pushing small armies across a table. I'm Drew, and joining me, as always, is my cousin Adam, a newly sworn disciple of the Blood God, and proof that I'll just touch up one more detail can last 3 hours.
Yeah, I'm working on the backstory for why this corn acolyte has ivory buttons while the rest of them have brass buttons. Just far more in line with corn, but I wanted to mix it up a little. Anyways, good to be here. So,
Yeah, alright, and today we're setting the dice aside and picking up the brushes as we dive into one of the most rewarding, frustrating, and occasionally paint covered parts of the Warhammer hobby. From our first miniatures and favorite paints to hobby disasters, techniques we've learned, and the colors we keep coming back to, we're talking about everything that brings our armies to life, one brushstroke at a time. So, that being said, Adam, tell me about your goblins and the boars.
you would start with the goblins and the boars. Yeah, it's great that we're doing an episode about painting because I've been doing none of that.
Yeah,
None of that
yeah.
for the past 108 hours or whatever it is.
I was
I
waiting for this episode to specifically just bring out the angst about the old world goblin army you're assembling along with the boars.
I kind of like the way that the box is set up, the instructions, which are minimal. It's like a napkin with instructions on it. So I've got the Orc and Goblins battalions for the old world, and so you start with the Orcs, and the Orcs aren't too bad. Fairly straightforward, and they're also not as well. I guess they're kind of big. There's like 31 of them. And then you go over to the chariots and you're thinking like, well, I just went through 31, so putting together two chariots is like nothing. And then just everything falls apart. It just nothing fits right. The boar heads in particular, I had to pull up the green stuff because I was like, there's just these just don't fit together. The instructions were also wrong. I was pretty certain. I sent the picture to you so you can, you know, so that you could verify
Yeah,
sanity check me
yeah, I
on
remember
that.
that.
Yeah, and then I got to the goblins and it was just like which aren't too bad except there's 40 of them and yeah, I mean there's just not much to say about cleaning the mold lines off of 40 spears, so goblin spears. And forearms. They all have individual each shield arm has its own forearm just in case you really wanted that detail in there. So anywho, I'm almost done with that.
So
Um
that's 40 forearms, is what you're saying.
um Basically, I don't know. I'm not good at math, but like I think that's probably, yeah, something like that. Sad. Anyways, how are you doing? How's your painting adventures going?
Well, it's from when I mean, I think like all of us do, we bounce around from model to model or system to system. And um, lately, I've been working on my night haunt. So I've gone through a significant amount of Soulblight Gravelord, Death Rattle skeletons, which I like painting skeletons because before that it was the Ossiarch Bone Reapers, and I jumped back into Night Haunt. And the interesting thing about Night Haunt is that they're frail to put together, or seemingly frail to put together, but when I paint them, they're actually pretty easy to paint. I mean, it depends on how crazy you want to get with the ethereal parts of them. But I've just gone
Right.
with like the Pyregeist style painting where they have like this neon green for the end tails of it, and then I use a couple of contrast paints on top of it, or I guess before it, and then I layer on the tesseract on top of it to get the glowy parts. But for the most part, it's not too bad because I use Incubi Darkness, and if you guys don't know what colors I'm talking about, these are all part of the now Warhammer color series, previously Citadel paints, and they've been working, amazingly well. And I don't always use Citadel paints, but I have, well, I think as a lot of us in the hobby do, we just have like tons of different paints for different reasons and just accumulate different brands over time. But that's all to say that it's going pretty cool. I like the ethereal effect I got going on them, and it's nothing crazy over the top, but gives me a chance to do some highlighting with some dark tones and light tones all in the cool color range side of it, cool hues, and a little bit of metallic stuff. So, yeah, Night Hunt. I'm going to probably jump into what I have on my desk here. Probably a couple of the Heresy models I have from the Saturday box that we got together. And then I got some Tomb Kings of Camry that I got to catch up on. I'll probably just rotate between those.
That's a pretty solid backlog you got there. So,
Oh
I
yeah,
mean,
that's not even. I mean, as you know, that's just what's on my desk, not what's in my closet or
yeah,
or
that's right.
or the stack behind me. It's not any of
That's
those.
that's the backlog of things you've started. So,
Right, right. Because I
yeah,
mean, as we get into like, and we get into like the painting discussion side of stuff, it's just like you're like, okay. I'm gonna build this army, and then I tell myself I'm gonna paint. I'm gonna paint these models, and then I can move on to something else. Especially like a lot of us, like I know you had brought this up to me, is like, okay, I'm gonna build these, I'm gonna paint these, and then I can buy more. And then you turn around and there's three more boxes that you bought behind you, and you're like, oh, I did not hold myself to that.
right. Yeah, there's the like I am one of the discords I'm on. They have like a hobby golf thing in it, which is, you try and keep it's like golf, and you score a point for -1 for every model that you finish. But the implication there is that everyone always buys more models. So there's plenty, most people are still in the positives because they buy a box and it ups their score by like 14. um, they have to start all over again. So I have kept up with that, but and this one's going to help me a lot because it's a lot of models. But yeah, I know what you mean. So
Yeah.
I
When
mean
we
that's yeah,
when we get into the building side of things too, it's like I don't have a ton of experience building the Tomb Kings, but the few models that I did build, the ones that you had actually gotten for me last year, I got around to building before I went off on a work trip, and when I came back, I was like, okay, great. I've never built old world models before. I'm really excited about this. And you're right. There is an innate challenge to building old world models because they've got a lot of flat pieces. They're not really jointed. You have to like free float them. Like you were describing to me with these goblins, that there's the forearm and the shield, but then they connect to the torso, but then the hands have to connect to the weapon or whatever they're holding. And you have to
right.
like use all of your fingers to make sure that the glue sticks to all of them and sets. And you just gotta sit there staring at your one little goblin, and you look it down at your desk, and there's sprues full of other goblins that you have to do this for 39 more times.
Right, like you have this learn this pose and it's almost like you're like meditating or something where you're like holding this small plastic piece together, just waiting perfectly still.
Yeah.
And then you take your hand off and you're like, oh, it's gonna stay, and then it doesn't. It just slides off and you're just like, shit. Like what, how did that happen?
Yeah.
I
Like,
put so much glue on it, and yeah, then you gotta do it again. And sometimes it does stick. So but yeah, I think, interestingly with the old world model, something that I have kind of liked about it, and maybe just because I played Destruction, and the aesthetics of it and all, but like because it has so many the flat old school like flat joints and stuff, and there's so many little like the forearms are detached from the shield that you have to put onto the torso and stuff. It gives them a very janky look, and which seems very on point for the Gabos. Like they shouldn't like I intentionally put one of the shields on upside down because that seemed like a very goblin thing to do. Um, it's just they probably don't even think it's upside down. So I think in that sense, I actually kind of appreciate it. And same with the orcs; it gives them kind of a rabble look. I don't know, if Tomb Kings it would have the same, or like if you play the sea, is it like the Sea Elves or one of the factions in Old World?
sea elves? I don't think sea elves, no. But
Just elves in
what
general.
elves? What elves? High
Yeah,
elves. Yeah.
right. Like they love their lines and squares and everything looking the exact same. Like that would be torturous. I feel like
Yeah,
maybe they're
yeah, it would
maybe
be.
they're low use.
The Tomb Kings have some variety with that, especially with their weapon loadouts and things of that nature. But I mean, the thing about building skeletons in general is like you're just assembling stick figures. And in the old world, like if I were to compare the Tomb King's standard infantry models against Bone Reapers or even Death Rattle and the Soulblight Grave Lords, there's a lot of variety that you see in the style of the sculpts in Age of Sigmar, but in the old world they're more static, which isn't a bad thing. It's just it's different, a little more retro, which I think is cool. It adds some variety because I build a lot of skeletons, so I like it.
Yeah, I mean literally retro. I looked at the sprue on one of mine. I think it's from 1998.
Oh
Was
wow.
the stamp on it? So yeah.
So that being said, when you assemble all 40 of these goblins, what painting technique are you going to use to get them on the table?
For these, I'm going to do speed paint because I wanted to get through them. And which I normally use speed paint for different some models. So starting with the the priming, I live in the Pacific Northwest where, like in the winter, it's like permanently rainy and cold all the time.
Yeah.
So it's not great weather to spray them. So I have an airbrush station, and so I'll do the priming with I got um, Monument Hobbies, their Primer Pro Acryl primer that I'll spray onto all of them, which isn't honestly too bad. It's obviously not as fast, but you get like a very, I know you've done it before, but like, I'd be curious your thoughts, but you get a very like thin layer doing it that way,
Yeah.
because you have so much control.
Yeah, it's I've over time I've grown to appreciate airbrush priming over rattle cans, and it's I don't think there's a right or wrong way to prime your models, but with the airbrush, you're right. Like you don't have to worry about the weather or seasons. You can just prime them. You don't have to worry about the aerosol in the rattle cans and it stinking up everything. It's a lot cleaner, more precise. You save on paint because it is a thinner layer. And I
Right.
actually really like the thinner layer of primer look over what I would get on a rattle can. And I could see myself rattle canning if I had like tons of terrain to paint, just easier. But for a lot of specific models, especially when I'm concerned about details, the airbrush is the way to go. I really like it. I use the Army Painter matte black for my primer, and
Yeah.
and that's just put through an airbrush, and it's worked incredibly well for me. And like if we're talking about slap chop technique or speed painting techniques, things like that, which they don't always coincide, but if you want to do a quick speed paint, you could slap chop. And if you're out there listening and you're like, oh, I've heard of slap chop, but I don't really know what it is. What it is down and dirty is just a dark primer with like you can dry brush a lighter color over it. A lot of people will do like black as the primer, and they'll dry brush either a gray or a white over it. You could do the same thing with an airbrush, just hitting it at certain angles to give the highlights, just hit the edges and stuff like that. And then you apply contrast paints over it, which are more translucent, and the colors will go through with the highlights already underneath because of the slap chop technique. So it gives you like kind of a shortcut to giving edge highlights and then variance in the model with shading, just because your contrast is going to be more see-through on the primer and base coats with the highlighting that you've done beforehand. And it's relatively fast, and it was like really popular a year or so ago. It was like circulating like slap chop was this new technique. I think the term was, but the technique itself has been around forever.
Yeah. I mean, and I think actually, is it still holding up, or people kind of like started pushing back against it?
I don't think people are pushing back against it, more as it's just not become like the primary way of painting, or it's not the trend anymore. And I think over
Right.
time people have started using slap chop style or contrast painting as an extra tool in their paint kit, when it comes to techniques on getting paint on their model, because there's a lot of really cool things you can use contrast paint for, even slap chop style painting initially to get your base coats and shading, and then you use normal acrylic paints on top of it, and it all looks really cool. I mean, again, there's no right or wrong way to put paint on your model, but if you're just trying to get models on the table, battle ready, like good to go, slap chop is super great, especially for infantry models when you have 40 goblins to paint. That's probably what I would do too if I had 40 goblins, which I don't.
Yeah. Yeah, so and that's basically where I'm at is like so with like slap chop, usually people I think dry brush the stuff on them.
Sure.
I do something that I just kind of did on my own, but it's basically azimuth, right? Or azimuth
Zenithal.
shading. Uh, yes, something zenithal
Yep.
shading. So like where you spray it with a spray can from the top. I just thought like maybe I could do this with an airbrush, and so what I do is I just take it and then so like the base primer is going to be usually a dark brown, and this is one that I tried out with the goblins because I wanted them to look more like they were torchlit, like have a more sepia um, undertone underneath them, and then took ivory actually, or was it ivory? No, khaki actually, and that's what I did the zenithal with. So basically, just taking an airbrush and then going up and down and like spinning it with my other hand. Until I feel like it's got the right shading on it. If you angle it right, that keeps the areas that would normally be like under the light relatively dark. And then you just kind of, yeah, that's basically what I do. And then move on to speed painting, and it's how I got my gloom spike together, and then did the air chop with them, and then did a lot of them mostly through speed paints. And it wasn't until I had like a fairly solid army going that I slowed down and was like, I kind of want to get more into the conventional style of painting. So,
Right.
but
Yeah, and there is that progression of painting because I very very much started only speed painting. It's like when we first started getting into the hobby together, um, we started 40K. I think a lot of people that's their entry point into the hobby also. And when
yeah,
I started with the World Eater army, and I had so many berserkers on the table, just an unreal amount of berserkers as we all do because they're fun and pointy and they've got axes and stuff like that.
it's the
But
game.
it's like I tried painting because my very first model I painted was a Leviathan Dreadnought from the 10th edition launch box, and I just like had I think it was Mephiston Red, and I didn't know anything about Space Marine chapters or anything like that. I was just like, hey, red on this guy would be cool, which is fine, that works. But I didn't know anything about thinning paint. I didn't know anything about dry or wet palettes or like nothing. So I just like took it out of the pot and just started putting it on the model. And if you know anything about dreadnoughts, which I'm sure many people do, there's a lot of flat surfaces, and not thin to paint on flat surfaces can be relatively tough for a beginner. So I'm not going to say the model looked terrible, but it would have worked. But I've evolved a lot since then, and I transitioned into a slap chop style using speed paints. I absolutely love the Army Painter speed paint series. It's just super cool and user friendly. You don't have to use the speed paint medium, but the control of the speed paints works significantly better if you use the medium there. And you can also control the depth of the color. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but the depth of what you're getting and just the control of the paint itself is a lot easier. But you're right. There's a natural progression to like, okay, I've got speed painting down. I got the slap chop style down. Now I want to get into conventional acrylics. And what does that look like? Because there are like so many brands of acrylic paints out there for hobbying, which is I've read and heard many many times we're in the golden age of paints for wargaming, which is super cool that we're in there. You have so many opportunities to get different brands and styles. What do you currently have? Like the majority of your paints, what would you say you have?
So my big one is two thin coats. So I was at the hobby store, and I was there probably to pick up speed paints or something. And the guy was like, "Have you ever tried out two thin coats?" And I was like, I mean, my first reaction was like, "Oh my God, another paint line."
Yeah.
But I forget why I ended up grabbing like, one of their trios or whatever, but I think it might have been because I was taking I looked at Duncan Rhodes and like his website and I actually went through his sort of introduction course series, which is really good. And I would suggest it for anyone really who's like getting into the hobby. He's very, very good at simplifying like how to get started, especially with the conventional paint style. But and then, like their system, especially early on with the wave one and two, is just a lot of core primary colors with their triad system. And I kind of dug the triad system when I was working with the Sylvaneth, where I had, sort of an ivory and brown and blue system. So it like kind of simplified things for me. And also the paints are really good. So they mix very easily. So I think that's something that frustrates a lot of new people is like, how do I get the paint consistency right? And like, I think it's just an experience thing. You get a feel for what your brush, for me at least, I get a feel for when my brush is at the right thickness, usually. And so, um, but yeah, that's kind of so a big, I'd say like half of my stuff is that, and the other half is actually still speed paints. So I tend to do kind of a hybrid approach. I think speed paints are just actually better in certain scenarios. Like squig skin, uh, to be very specific. I
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the look of speed paints better than I mean you can do it with acrylics, straight acrylics, but it takes forever. So
yeah. Well, along with your squig skin, like I will not paint bone with standard acrylic paint. I just won't do it. Like I'll do my primer color and then I'll do either a zenithal with the airbrush or dry brush light tones over it, like usually white. But I refuse to use anything other than speed paints for bone. Like I'm just not gonna do it.
interesting.
Yeah, it just
That's
won't.
really interesting.
It won't look. It just doesn't get the same look. It's so good. Speed paint like is easy. It gives you the shading exactly where you want to. If it's like too light or dark, then you just throw on like a wash over it, and it always looks really really good. Like you don't have to do much else after that. Maybe a little dry brush if you want to hit some highlighting, but yeah, like
Yeah,
yeah,
that's funny because I mean, like, I think my one holdup with speed paints with the squigs actually is the teeth. The teeth I like doing with acrylics because I like and that, but they're more like fangs. They're not like bones. And then I just do the stains myself, but that's more controlled. Like I want it around the gum lines. It's a little bit different than skeletons, I think.
so that's a great distinction there. So I'm talking about like like rib cages and arms and that kind of humanoid anatomy. But I think you're right when it gets into like fangs. Because if I was looking at my flesh eater quartz, I mean even some of the Osark Bone Reaper stuff too. Like there is a good call to get like the detail, especially when you're getting near gum lines or you want some sort of fleshy influence on it. That yeah, I think acrylics do respond better in that sense, especially when you're trying to get like those details and stains. But I'm never going to paint a rib cage ever again without speed paint. It just I won't do it.
Yeah, totally. Oh, and gobs, I forgot. They're not called fangs with squigs. They're called gobs.
Of
I should
course.
know better.
Yeah.
Yeah, important things.
So when we talk about the triad stuff, I really appreciate it. Like if you're a brand new painter out there and you're like, okay, what do I buy? Like I know I want these colors, but like there's a series of three, and these triads are like the Army Painter Fanatics line has sixes, right? Which is really just two sets of three of like
Two
one,
triads, right?
yeah, two triads of one color line. Um, and you're like, okay,
Which
well,
in, which interestingly came out after Two Thin Coats started to become very popular. I'm just saying.
yeah, yeah, and I've got some two thin coats as well because you convinced me with their highlight colors. I didn't get the triads, but their highlights for me. That's why I love two thin coats.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're like a brand new painter and you're looking at all these triad systems and you're like, I don't know what to get, and then you look at like a starter kit that gives you a bunch of the primary colors, maybe some secondary colors and some metallics. You can't go wrong there because even if you get the basic colors, you could still mix your primary and secondary colors to get different hues that you're looking for. And then once you start identifying your color mixing and you're like, oh, you know what, actually, I could make this lighter yellow, let's say, but I don't want to mix it all the time. That's when you could start looking at your triads and getting the different brightnesses or darknesses within those colors that you're really looking for. And I've seen advice online a lot about the mega sets for paints, and a lot of people discourage others from buying like the big sets of paint just because you usually won't use them all and to buy
Yeah.
them singular. But you know, at the collector side of me, I like paint sets because it's fun to collect them. Even though I'm not doing that with the Fnatic war paints right now, I'm just collecting them one by one as I need them. So that's fun for me. But have you been buying them individually, like over the years that we've been doing this, or do you like sets?
I always buy them. I usually buy them like in groups. Like I'll go down to the store, and just buy like, for whatever project that I'm working on. I'll do a little bit of research and then head down there. But yeah, I've never really done the sets. And it's kind of I kind of am aligned with that. Like a lot of them, I mean, there's definitely some colors that I wouldn't have used from the sets. It probably would have saved me money over the long run to do it though, just because I ended up buying so many.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, I mean, if you really want to just get the whole range at once, um, why not? I think like but I will say that buying it individually has, you know, I don't feel like I'm set for one paint system. Like I do a mix. Like I've got speed army painter speed paints and two thin coats, and then also Citadel. Usually just for their shades. They're I mean the shade range in Citadel is way past anything from any of the other um, paint vendors out there. So but yeah, I definitely go individual. So
Yeah, they're the thing that Citadel or Warhammer Color has now is like their shades, washes, and technical paints are pretty amazing. I consistently lean on them, especially their technical paints for basing. It's just so
right.
convenient, and I don't think anyone out there in the hobby, whether you like Warhammer Color or not, you're gonna have like Seraphim Sepia and Nuln Oil and Agrax Earthshade in your kit. I think we all just have it because they're so good and
Yeah.
reliable.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I think one time I was at the store and the guy was scoffing about how everyone just wants Agrax Earthshade, and but at the same time, it's so useful.
It's
It's
so
just that,
good. Oh,
yeah, and like Nuln Oil, if you want something mechanical, make it look oily, then give it some Nuln Oil, and
right.
then now it's like it's just the edge factor. It immediately makes anything look more edgy,
It
in my
does.
opinion.
It does. And you don't even need like okay, so I was talking about painting bones earlier. Like yeah, I don't even need to use speed paint. I could just use Agrax Earthshade over a light base, a base like a Wraithbone type, base layer, and it looks awesome. It just looks so good. Like there's not much else you'd have to do to it. They're just great paints.
Yeah, they are. I mean, like so, shades always the Warhammer color. I've got quite a few of them. Not so much with the contrast, but because I do like speed paints. I feel like they're like the first, and were they the first? I don't know. Did they release the contrast after speed paints became a thing?
Uh, no, contrast paints did exist. There, I think they used a different name for it, but contrast paints existed within the Citadel range before speed paints came out. But they didn't have the same consistency that the speed paints do. There's a very unique way that the medium and the pigments in speed paints set that is just. I think they're their own unique thing that work just incredibly well.
Yeah. Do you use Warhammer contrast much? Because I should say, like, Drew is definitely, he's explored way deeper into the whole, like, mediums and ways that really pushing, like, how far you can go with speed paints and contrast paints. So curious if you use them.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. It's become a hobby and an interest of mine over these years. But yeah, I've got since the last time we you visited me. We I've got a lot more paints, and
Jeez.
I've delved more into the line. Like my acrylic line again is the Army Painter. I just really like the Fanatic line. The paint on them and the amount of pigment they have in each drop, and then the control they have with the War Paint Stabilizer to me is really friendly, and I really like the feel of it. But yeah, when it comes to contrast, shading paints, and technicals, I've got a lot of Citadel ones or Warhammer Color ones because they're fun. They've got really unique colors that I enjoy using as well. But yeah, I mean, I pretty much just stick with those two brands for the most part. I've got some Vallejo, I've got some AK, and things like that. I mean, I've got a couple of different things here and there for specifics, and then I've got some inks and washes also, or some inks and oils. Sorry, inks and oils that I can mess around with when it comes to grimdark stuff. But other than that, yeah, it's I have a lot of
Other other than that,
yeah.
yeah, I feel like when you bring up Vallejo paints, it's that's how you know you're in deep. So I have yet to venture into that paint line. So yeah, um,
So
great.
so we've talked about a lot of the different types of paints we have, and the Cousins Grim, regardless of our name, is a very positive channel when it comes to wargaming, and we just are happy and stoked to talk about the setting and everything else included in it. But I want to take a moment and ask you, what is your least favorite paint and color to work with?
Oh, um, white speed paints, useless. I've never been satisfied with a white speed paint. Drive me nuts.
I don't think
Your
I.
turn. I don't have anything more to say than that. They're just disappointing.
I
So,
don't think I was expecting that answer. You're right. Okay, so before I get into my answer, because I have very specific paints that I
it
have.
took me a second because I repressed the memories of how disappointed I was with them.
Right, right, and yeah, there's a couple of paint pots that come to mind that I have an immense disdain and a hatred for because I can't figure out how to use them yet. Um, but the trick with white speed paints is that they are not, in fact, white speed paints. Right? That's the issue with them. Is you get them
Yeah.
thinking. I got them thinking like, oh, this is great. I could use a white speed paint. I'm assuming I just put it over a white base layer because if it's anything else, it's not going to be white speed paint when I put it on top of it because it's not going to be that thick. And turns out that all white speed paint is pretty much gray, and you use it for shading over white base coats, and you have to use the speed paint medium to really get a good control on that translucency that you want out of it to make it more of a shade than an actual paint. And it's still frustrating because it's gray. Even their holy white or whatever it is, whatever color their white is still gray. So yeah, there's that.
That that tracks.
I have to
Very
dig
much
in.
so.
I'm opening up the my paint. I'm opening up my paint drawer right now because
You're just
there's
looking for the one that like will immediately bring up a well of anger in you when you look
well,
upon
I found it. Oh, I
its
found it.
bottle.
I found it. I was gonna say retributor armor. That gold color, but that's the one I wanted and the one I should have gotten, but they didn't have. So what I ended up getting was auric armor, and this is a citadel goldish, kind of a bright gold, but not so bright. And I just needed a gold at the time, and I really wanted a citadel one. Like I was like, I really want a citadel gold to paint with because I had an Underworlds box that I was painting for some Stormcasts that I had in there, and I was using these Stormcasts and these Orcs to just test painting techniques out on. So I was like, yeah, let me try this paint. I hate this paint. I hate this paint so much, and the reason is that it's not a bad color. It's just that the pigment and the medium don't mix as hard as you want them to mix and go on smoothly, or maybe I'm saying you, but really me and anyone listening, I'm not talking about you either. I'm talking about me. I cannot get this pigment and this medium to mix for the life of me, no matter how much I mix it, no matter how much I thin it or don't thin it. It just refuses to stick together. So I'll like put it on my brush and I'll paint it on the thing I'm painting, and it just separates, like, no matter what I do. And for that reason, I have a great dislike for auric armor. And I will keep this paint pot forever because I bought it, but I will never use it again until I until I figure out a technique in my head to get that to work. Because I haven't given up on it, but more than likely it'll just stay at the bottom of my drawer, and I'll just have a strong hatred for it.
I'm very amused by all of this. I mean, you know why it didn't work, right?
Why?
It's just because all that thinning and stuff, it's not very orky.
Oh, well,
It's very unorky.
it is not orky at all. You're right. Yeah. In fact, I should probably just dump it all over my model and then shake the model around, and then it would have a nice base layer. But even
You might be pleasantly surprised by the results. I'm just saying.
but but even then,
Just
I think with me doing that, the pigment still would separate. I don't know why.
just make
But
sure to shake it in a red box. It'll make it faster.
that's right. That's right. And you know what? Maybe it's just the paint pot I got. Maybe other people out there who have gotten auric armor love it and swear by it, and I just got an off paint pot. I don't know. Or maybe it's just me. I can't figure it out. But this little bottle of paint that's in my hand right now, I dislike you, bottle of paint. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that. That's great.
You're welcome. And
Yeah, it makes me happy.
yeah, I'm glad it makes somebody happy out there. Hopefully, other people listening will find amusement in my disdain for auric armor. I wanted it to work so badly. Um, yeah. So one last thing I want to talk about is because you play frequently, more consistently than I do on the tabletop. So you have experience looking at other armies, especially your 2,000 point games or skirmishes or narrative play. You see armies on the table physically frequently, and
Yeah. Yeah.
of the armies that you see out there, how many of them would you say is like painted, or are you playing against gray armies most of the time?
Definitely not mostly gray armies. I'd say most people get to the priming stage by the it's not that much harder to get it from constructed to primed. But I would say the majority of armies that I play against at the places that I play are painted to some degree. I've was playing a Lumineth Realm Lord player the other day, and it was a great black army because that's what he primed it as. But also LRL had just come out with their new core book or their new battle tome. So I think he just got it into that army in general, as do a lot of players. So that's usually I think when you run into that is uh, like when I did a narrative campaign, it was a bunch of Warhammer 40K players trying out Age of Sigmar for the first time, and they were just kind of building them as they went along. But even some of those were very, very well painted because they're just very hardcore players. So um, I think I think really the variation is just the approach, like how far people go with each of their models. There's some that clearly take a very long time to put one each out on the board. Some people are more just like they just want something to get out there. So
Yeah, yeah, and the question comes up frequently. What is considered battle ready? And I think there's some definition out there, I'm sure, but for the most part, it's like if they're primed and they got a couple of base colors on there, it's more than likely good to go. I'm sure your tournament organizers have specifics depending on where you're playing, but at the end of the day, there's no right or wrong way to do it. At least for me, I don't mind playing against gray armies at all. I don't. Some people, that's just what they want to do. They want to have a army and play it. They want to play the game. They don't care about painting or even building. They just want the models on the table and to play the game. There's nothing wrong with that. But for me, when I play any semblance of the game, I really appreciate the immersion part. Plus, I like seeing other players' creativity with the style of paint jobs that they do. But to me, painting is a major part of this hobby that I really love and enjoy. So, not just being able to be creative and put what you imagine your model to look like, but to see what other people do, because it can be very inspiring. People come up with amazing paint jobs and techniques and ideas and ways of manipulating color on the model, and it frequently happens to me. I mean, you send me some pictures of things that you work on, and I'm like, oh my gosh, dude, like how did you do that? Like, what were you thinking when you did that? And you tell me about it, and then it gives me ideas, and I'm like, oh, maybe I can do that with this model. And it's just fun. It's like
Yeah,
a collaborative, creative effort between all of us in the hobby. So
right.
I don't mind people with gray armies at all, because again, we all invested into this hobby for different reasons. But boy, do I love seeing paint jobs.
Yeah, there's like a myriad of ways that you can go about painting. Like both of us have very different styles. We had a very divergent approach to how we learned the hobby in terms
Mm.
of painting. And like we've shared stuff over time, but like that's another thing. You go and like meet other people who are painting and stuff. And there's certainly like certain techniques that are very common and but everyone there's always little variations in how people go about it.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, and I mean, again, it's like you can get as basic as you want to when it comes to painting, and or you can get like Golden Demon Winter style painting where they're just, I mean, those people are amazing. The way that they put paint on models is
I
crazy.
yeah, I saw the last year's, and I mean, you just looking at some of them, and you're like, that's just like a photograph. That's
Oh, I
you
know,
can't be serious with this. It's so realistic.
I know, and it's so cool looking. It really, really is. But yeah, that's that's painting. I think we only have one last thing to talk about or do when it comes to the painting episode, and that is the paint song. Paint, paint, paint,
Paint,
paint,
paint,
paint, paint,
paint, paint,
paint, paint song,
paint,
paint song,
paint, paint,
paint
paint,
song.
paint, 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 paint.
With that being said, that is our Cousins Grimm paint song, and I hope you guys put that on repeat and listen to it throughout the night, because
That's it's our new lead in
it's our new
from
lead
now
in
on.
forever.
Yeah. Yep. Never gonna top
Uh,
that.
Man, okay. Well, as always, Adam and I have a bunch of stuff coming out every week. None of that's really changed. Just check out our YouTube channel if you want to see what's been going up. Podcast, again, released every Sunday. We've got narrative episodes coming out. It's going to change up a little bit this week with our narrative stuff, because there's a little bit of story to tell before we jump into the next battle. So if you haven't seen it, go ahead and check that out. Again, songs every Friday for Grimtown. So the next one will be coming out tomorrow at midnight, which is going to be cool. More of the same stuff. And yeah, anything to plug, Adam?
Oh no, no, I think I'm good from here. Yeah, next narrative episode's coming out on Friday, so same as was before. Drew's excellent writing. Had a lot of fun putting music to the writing, and yeah, so that'll come out on Friday. So excited for that.
Sweet. Thank you, General So's Chicken, for being the fuel to our grim fire. And
Brought to you
with
by Panda Express.
and with that, everyone, thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening for yet another episode of the Cousins Grimm podcast. And we will see you guys next time.